Hello all. I thought maybe for my next installment I would do a video about tools. And well, sometimes in my life I feel like I'm a good example of what not to do, more so than an example of what to do. Like these tools would not be a good example of what to use to work on your guns with. Now, I know we said shooting accessories, and this may not be something that you take to the range, but this is something that we might have to do for cleaning or for maintenance, or maybe something like adding a scope. When you're using screwdrivers, if they even look like this, don't use it on a gun. I mean, I have modified some of my tools sometimes. Sometimes things get broken, and if you look real close at the tip of this one, yeah, it's been broken and sharpened to well, yeah, don't use that on a gun. Yep, just like this one too, it's not even. And although you might think it's a very thin slot in the screw that you want to be able to get that in there, no, not a good idea, and I'll show you why in a little bit. Tiny screws, Phillips head screws, don't use a bit or a screwdriver like this that has been chowdered up already on something else. It is just going to do terrible things. Yeah, here's another really good one that, let me see if I can get her focused in on it. Yeah, this one's had some hard use to it. When you're doing punches for pins, this is not a punch. This is a nail set. Use the right tools. This is not a punch. This is a center punch for punching a guide hole or a guide divot when you're going to drill metal. So this is very hard, and it will do bad things to your firearms. If you're going to use a hammer, although a ball peen might not be a terrible choice, don't use one that has a face that looks like this, that's all boogered up, because it's going to booger up the surface on your firearms. If you're going to use a hammer, use one that's been at least polished and clean. Otherwise, it's going to leave marks in your work. Let me show you what I mean. This is a receiver off of a basket case, Riverside Arms. It's an old single shot break action 12 gauge, and I'm not sure what exactly I'm going to do with it, but I mean, this is pretty old, and here's an example of a screw that has had some hard use on it with the screwdriver, maybe like this one. Oh, there's the one. That's the one I wanted to show you. That has been totally chowdered up by a screwdriver that did not fit properly, and when you twist and it cams out of the hole, it just makes a mess of things, and it makes it harder to take apart later. It devalues the gun. So please don't use tools like this guy. And I gotta say, I am not a gunsmith. I would not even try to profess to be. I'm just mechanically inclined, and I like to work on some of my own stuff. If there's something that's way out of my league, I will definitely take it to a good, competent gunsmith. But there's lots of videos to watch on YouTube. Some of my favorites. I don't know if anybody's ever tuned into Mark Novak of Anvil. The guy is phenomenal as a gunsmith, and he will absolutely, with no reserve, talk about his disdain for, maybe people like me that will do their own work and just make an absolute mess of things. See an Arsenal, another really good one. The things that they do with surplus weapons and old military gear, and of course, watching Gun Jesus himself take something apart is a hell of a lot of fun. But what I'm driving at, you don't have to spend a huge ton of money. This is actually a pretty cheap set of tools, but these are dedicated for me for when I'm going to do any kind of gunsmithing or gun repair. The bits are what they call hollow ground, so they fit just right into the screw the way they're supposed to. Don't use them for anything else, because they get sort of, well, chowdered up like those ones that I showed earlier. This one someone else used, I'm not sure who, and it's a little bit marked up, and I can already tell, so I'll be a little bit reserved about using that for any kind of work. Now, like I say, I do, minimal things. shortening the length of pull on a stock, I don't feel too bad about doing. Disassembling for cleaning and repair. When you're disassembling, get a good set of punches that fit. Ideally, brass would be better, but well, I got a good set of punches. I keep them clean. I keep them from being used for anything else. When you're taking pins out or trying to put pins back in, sometimes a drill bit works really well as a slave pin. And if you don't know what that means, you put this in place of a pin as you're trying to drive it together to keep the parts aligned, and a nice, good, clean drill bit will function in that service. Some people are going to cringe at this, but a hammer. Now, this little tiny claw hammer is basically useless as far as any kind of real framing, but I use this one in my leather work because I have the face cleaned and polished. Use this to pound down the threads. And this is my go-to if I really have to do something with one of my firearms, and oftentimes I'll put down a piece of leather to make sure. So it's a nice little light duty. Ideally, a brass hammer would be the better choice. So there's some other tools that you would probably want to have, some sockets and wrenches. I didn't bother to bring those up because that could be so varied, and I just had enough tools to lay out. But gun-specific tools. A good choke tube wrench. And this is like a little multi-tool. Use the right thing instead of trying to jam a quarter in the end of the barrel, or heaven forbid, your pocket knife. You're going to damage your firearms. Don't do that. Some other tools that you're going to maybe use when you're working on things. If you're like me and you wanted to get into building ARs, there's some specialty tools that you might want to buy that would really, really help. Like the clamping block to put the upper in when you're doing the assembly, the guide tool to make sure you get the gas tube in properly. I talked about this block earlier whenever I was mounting that scope up, or that red dot on the AR. Having one of these just to hold the gun steady is invaluable. A castle nut tool, instead of trying to hammer that thing on and make a mess of it. They're tools that they're a good investment. If you're going to be doing a couple of them, it's really going to help out. This is something called a crow's foot wrench, if you're not familiar. When you're trying to put your barrel nut on and you need to torque it, you're going to say to yourself, well, my torque wrench takes sockets. How am I going to get that onto the end of the... You don't have to. You get a crow's foot wrench. It accepts a ratchet attachment. Yes, it does make a minor change in the actual torque value that you're putting onto your fastener, but you're going to have to probably move that fastener depending on your barrel nut to align things for the gas tube anyway. This will get you better in the ballpark where you need to be. Another thing I'd try to add is when you're doing gun repairs, if you're doing them yourself, I understand field repairs. I understand things temporary sometimes. How many of us have something that has had duct tape on it for the last year and a half because we did a field repair and then that held, so we just left it that way? But try to use the right parts. There's lots of good sources out there. I know I've gone to Numrek for quite a few things. This is one example. I got this 94. This is not the one that I showed the other day, but this is one that I picked up so that my son would have one to hunt with whenever we go. And it's really in not too bad a shape, but right here, this one particular screw is what holds the spring door for loading and unloading. And it becomes very apparent that that is neither an original part nor the appropriate part, because well, and that was actually a sticking point, a negotiation point on the price. So when you're looking at the value of a gun, the value of an older gun, if you're not using the right parts, and well, this one actually, you can tell it when you run your finger over it, has been chowdered by a bad screwdriver, that yeah, they could have done better. All right, so I qualified earlier that I am not a gunsmith. I don't profess to be. I am mechanically inclined, and I'll work on just about anything. At least I'll give it a try. So I'm not claiming to be perfect. I'm not claiming to be really good at this. Matter of fact, my tools are pretty cheap, and they're actually pretty limited. There's quite a few things I'd like to have that I don't. I just can't justify spending the money necessarily on all those things. Sick Nick, in his video the other day on slings, said that he was wondering if he would see others doing the same things and, you know, making the same videos. If we are making the same videos, I don't think that's a problem. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I think that means that we're using similar things, or we're using the same things that we know are good. And I'm sure there's plenty of other people that have got a lot better tools. I mean, I'd love to spend a couple bucks on a good set of Wheeler tools, you know, the torque driver that, I mean, it's all built into one instead of trying to fiddle with other things. In fact, that would be a great series. Maybe we should do another hashtag show me your tools. No, that's a bad idea. At any rate, if you've got some tools in your 10 guns and you were thinking about showing them, and don't think of not showing them now that I did a video on tools, because I'd love to see some of the better stuff out there. That mag charger that Firearms Addict gave me a tip on a few weeks back, I got one of those. I am happy with that. Can't be happier with it. So if there's some other things out there that you've got tools wise, I'd love to see them. And when you're doing some maintenance, please don't use the things that I opened with. Use some better tools. Please think of the GATs.